All right, we got a lot to talk about, okay? We got a lot to talk about. We're going to be talking about Israeli occupying force PR. Another banger, Fear and paywall ep with Emily was a wild listen. Oh yeah, it was pretty crazy. It's probably the craziest paywalled episode we've done so far on Fear and. Lloyd Austin is in Israel. Israeli PR failures in Gaza. Jubilee communism versus capitalism. Made a Kai meme using a Godzilla -1 scene. Okay. All right. Last week tonight on Jonathan Majors convicted of assault and harassment. I will cover that as well, I guess. But I mean, it's not like as important on the docket for me, at least, as all this other stuff that we're looking at. Noah Sampson on NoFap TikTok. Sure, that's later, though. New John Oliver, that's later as well. Anyway, there was more that I wanted to talk about. What am I missing? What am I? Oh, George Santos and Z-Way. That's right. Doesn't sound super duper political implicatively. What? On Z-Way and more. No pixel later as I try to do news in Los Santos in now. John Fetterman falling further? Yeah, fuck John Fetterman. I don't give a shit. I'm not progressive, actually. I'm not. It's like, whatever, who gives a shit? I know. Anyway, here, we're blasting off. Let the people know. The community note is wild. Yeah, I saw. John Fetterman is so fucking stupid because, I mean, he must have some kind of brain deficiency if he thinks that, like, people are not going to remember how John Fetterman has presented himself as a progressive throughout his entire fucking career. He's doing, like, a Kirsten Sinema-ass turn here. What the fuck?
I'm John Fetterman, and I'm a Democrat, and I'm a progressive.
It's like, wow, man, he's at Netroots. Like, what the fuck's he doing at Netroots? He's not a progressive. I'm not a progressive. I'm just a regular Democrat, says John Fetterman.
Overwhelmingly the favorite to win what could be the Democrat.
Okay. I'm just a Democrat running on what I've always believed plus know to be true. John Fetterman, I'm not a progressive. I'm just a regular Democrat. Here's the community notes absolutely hammering his asshole. There are multiple instances of John Fetterman's social media of him claiming to be a progressive. I know people that work for him. It's like kind of wild that he's making this fucking heel turn. And it's really awkward. He has like, outside of his like chief of staff, who is, I don't really know that well. There are plenty of people that I know that works for him on his comms team and shit. These are guys who are like union guys who've like worked with Bernie Sanders' campaign and many other people's campaigns. Like, these are motherfuckers that are like actually leftist people. It's so wild. It's so wild that he's trying to like retcon his image now to make like this weird fucking heel turn to act like he's not a progressive guy, but instead he's just like a regular boring ass Kirsten Sinema style Democrat, which is weird. I guess not a Kirsten Sinema style Democrat, but still like it just doesn't make sense. What does it really matter, though? So he has one shitty take about 99% good take, so you want to condemn him on that one shitty take? Seems like missing the forest for the trees. First of all, dumbass, that one shitty take has also basically built on top of a bunch of other shitty takes. Here, I'll give you a great example. John Fetterman recently said he's actually, just kidding, he's anti-immigration. Bro, his wife is a fucking immigrant. His wife is Brazilian. The fuck are you talking about? He's literally ran on being pro-immigration from the jump. And now he's acting like it's not just a one shitty take that happens to be pro-genocide, okay? It's literally, it doesn't just end there. Because of his pro-genocide stance on Israel, which is unceremonious and ridiculous, and he doesn't have to go this fucking hard to begin with. It's not like an apt political calculation for him. Now, on top of that, here's how it's piling on. Here's how it's actually fucking turning into a larger problem. Okay? In order to push forward a spending package, an emergency spending package for Israel and also for Ukraine, he has to now capitulate to the Republican Party on an insanely reactionary, insanely white nativist immigration package as well, which unironically goes against immigration. Now we're doing right-wing style immigration reforms, immigration restrictions, rather. So what happened? I thought it was just one take. It's so weird. It's so weird that it doesn't just like end and begin with this one take, which is, oh yeah, I just love the genocide Israel's conducting with our taxpayer dollars, which, by the way, ironically, doesn't even poll well. It is fucking unpopular, okay? The majority want a ceasefire. I don't even give a shit what the majority wants, though. I give a shit about the actual morality of the situation. I am a leftist after all, a progressive. And real progressives aren't just simply making arguments about what is politically favorable. Real progressives, unironically, assume positions, take positions, and advocate for positions that might not necessarily be all that popular, because we don't push for things just because it's going to be popular. We push for things because it's right, okay? We know that things will inevitably be popular if you can message around it correctly, which the Democratic Party rarely ever does. I think this is a fundamental principle that many people, many young progressives have forgotten about, right? I think that maybe they took the supposed popularity of progressive values under the Trump administration, because Democrats were negatively polarized against Donald Trump, for granted. I think a lot of people took that for granted. I think a lot of people took the Bernie popularity for granted and started saying like, oh no, it's not just that like we're progressive, our policies are also popular. Sure, some of our policies are genuinely popular, especially on the ballot. But without actual messaging beyond it, obviously some of them are going to be objective failures in the electoral sense. So what you have to do is advocate for these positions, not from the perspective of popularity, but also beyond that, from the perspective of morality. Okay?
Author Ryan Grimm is here with an inside look at the Squad and what he thinks is their political future. We'll be right back. Welcome back. In Washington, negotiations continue over an immigration deal that Republicans say must be made to pass further aid
I'm going to pee real quick,
and
but
Israel. I want to bring in Ryan Grimm, DC bureau chief at The Intercept, for more on this. Ryan is also the author of The Squad and host of the podcast Deconstructed. Ryan, thanks for joining us on this. Appreciate it. I want to talk about The Squad in a moment, but I first want to address, obviously, the negotiations that are ongoing in Washington right now. I actually just spoke with, a few minutes ago, Maryland Democrat Representative Jerry Connolly, who said this. Virginia representative. He will not support a return to Trump-era policies that were inhumane when talking about the immigration deal. Do you think a deal is going to get done here?
I don't think in the end they will strike a deal, at least in this round, because the incentives aren't really lined up. Republicans do want, tough border policy. They want these Trump-like immigration policies. But what they want more than that is to be able to blame Biden for chaos at the border. So there's kind of a contradiction there in the sense that, they'd rather kind of just leave it the way it is and point fingers for the next year. And they also don't want the Ukraine money going through. So my guess is that the outcome that they'd like is no deal and then pointing fingers. And so that's the easiest one to get as well, because all they have to do is just say no. So that's my suspicion of where they'll wind up. The only wild card is that I think Democrats also kind of cynically would like to have their hand forced when it comes to immigration. They don't want their fingerprints on it. They want to kind of be pushed to be tougher on immigration. And so there's some weird incentives and counter incentives lined up here.
This is what I talked about with, this is what I talked to David Dane about earlier today. Okay? Like, Democrats have not been messaging on immigration at all. I think the Squad and their hubris are also not seeking advice from old head leftists who fought these battles before. I think people legitimately think that, like, certain things certain principles are just going to be popular without even actual messaging being put behind it. And that's not the case. Okay? That's not how this works at all. You have to you have to push. You have to literally consistently cut messaging. Republicans never stop doing that. Okay? Republicans never stop messaging, even when it's a fucking failure, because they think that this is a long-term plan. Look at the transphobia shit. Look at the transphobia shit. Republicans recognize that the transphobia stuff is not enough. There isn't enough people motivated. There isn't enough people brain broken at this very moment to see transphobic policies as like a single issue vote, right? But in their endless desperation to find a new way to activate the white evangelical Protestant base, they still consistently try to create enough of an audience for that transphobia. That's why they message so aggressively. That's why they're also pushing for policies on top of that to like normalize transphobia, to make transphobia an anti-queer messaging, a moral panic that is valid, that is successful. Okay? And the reality is, the reality is like no one right now, it doesn't work, but it might work in the fucking future because the Republicans never stop. They keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing until it is a position that genuinely has a constituency behind it. Democrats, on the other hand, refuse to do this for good things. Things that are much easier to make popular, like immigrants are the backbone of American society. And not that long ago, did the Republican Party legitimately have a different perspective on immigration? Yes, they always had the white nativist immigration sentiments within their messaging, but there was a very real heel turn occurring in the Republican Party in the Mitt Romney era, where they were looking at immigration and going, maybe we need to do some comprehensive immigration reform, which Donald Trump completely destroyed, of course, because Donald Trump showed the Republican Party, no, actually, you can be as reactionary as you want on immigration, and Americans will actually push for it because the Democratic Party is never going to counter a message around that. Do you understand what I'm trying to say here? Democrats do not put forward counter messaging. Democrats do not tell you why immigration is good. They just sit there and allow Republicans to dominate the conversation. And then when they dominate the conversation and the population attitude towards immigration sours, right, in spite of the actual facts of the matter, and same goes for policing as well, Cinemarxism. While I disagree with you on a lot of the stuff that you say, you are absolutely correct on this. Same with policing. Democrats literally counter message against the Democratic base of support on policing. And then what happens? All that ends up happening is you ratchet towards a right-wing position. Democrats love making the Republican faulty premise the reality for some weird reason. Well, the weird reason is that they also, benefit from it, which is why Ryan Grimm here is saying, I think the Democrats want to be pushed in the direction of more reactionary immigration policy because they don't want to change the attitude for people. They don't. They are beholden to the same corporate benefactors. That's it. Reminds me of the left in Israel, which died hard for the things similar to what you're saying. Yeah. The Labor Party's death in Israel is damn near identical to what I'm describing with the Democratic Party. The only difference is the Democratic Party, in America, we have a two-party system. We don't have a Knesset, right? We don't have a parliamentary structure. So, like, you don't see a fall-off in the same way as, like, the Labor Party did. But it was neoliberalism. Volodymyr Zelensky is absolutely correct. Labor Party fall-off, like, in the late 90s is damn near identical to the same neoliberalism that eviscerated every other country as well. And the byproduct of this is a completely gutted social programs, a more reactionary base, and a ratcheting effect towards more and more fascist policies. Okay? It is genuinely so depressing and so devastating to watch this play out in front of my fucking eyes year over year over year as I scream into the void, it seems, where I keep saying, Democrats, message more. Start pushing the idea that, like, immigrants are the backbone of American society because it's the fucking truth. Start pushing the idea that immigrants aren't actually stealing our robust welfare safety nets because we don't even have robust welfare safety nets to begin with. The notion that, like, immigrants are actually predisposed genetically to doing more crime is a reactionary, fascist, psychopathic lie. There isn't even evidence. There's only evidence to disprove that narrative. And yet when you ask every average American, centrist, Democrat, right-wing, fascist, doesn't fucking matter, from all different walks of life, if you ask them about immigrants doing crime, they literally think a falsehood. They think this falsehood is correct. Why? Because the only domineering narrative is coming from the Republican side. It's coming from Fox News. And of course, if the only one talking about immigration is talking about immigration in a negative way, despite the fact that, like, the facts on the ground show the exact opposite of what the fucking Republicans are saying, then yeah, people are going to be more fucking bigoted. And the more bigoted they become, the more right-wing this position is going to be. And the more right-wing the immigration position, immigration sentiment becomes, the more the Democratic Party normalize that. And because they're terrified. They're terrified of losing elections, but they love losing elections in reality. So they're genuinely refusing to communicate the truth, okay? That immigrants are not predisposed to crime. They actually do crimes at a much lower rate per capita than natural-born U.S. citizens or even naturalized U.S. citizens, okay? And that immigrants are the unironic backbone of American agricultural production and American society in general, American labor in general. And the correct thing to do in this circumstance is not to shut off immigration or make Title 42 permanent, a fucking provision that the Republicans could only pass due to a global pandemic, right? A health provision, because immigrants are coming in and they might have COVID, and they might give people COVID. That was the reason why the Trump administration was able to utilize the CDC to shut off immigration in its entirety, okay? Asylum seekers and whatnot. And what did the fucking Democratic Party do? What is the Democratic Party doing right now? They are capitulating to the demands to make Title 42 permanent. So what difference does the Joe Biden administration have on this issue than the Trump administration? As a matter of fact, they are the ones who ended up literally turning around and making a Trump administration era provision that is supposed to be temporary due to a pandemic permanent. This is the exact same thing that Joe Biden had done when he was the vice president. Sidestepping Harry Reid to take tax cuts that were slated to sunset under the Obama administration, and he literally went in and sidestepped Harry Reid, which, by the way, ironically, Ryan Grimm perfectly details and documents in his earlier book, not The Squad, the other one. What was it? Yes, we Got Power, I think it was. Great book. And We Got People, not We Got Power. Anyway. Democrats never roll back the right-wing provisions that the Republicans put forward. As a matter of fact, they turn them permanent. They make them permanent. What is this?
At work here is like...
Oh, no, I don't care to watch this again. Okay.
You also, though, have some real clear breaks when it comes to certain members of the Democratic Party, both on Israel and immigration as well. John Fetterman being one of them, showing kind of more of an independent streak. This is from NBC News saying, "I'm not a progressive," John Fetterman says. He's breaking with progressives on hot-button issues with his fiery support for Israel and calling for Democrats to engage on tougher immigration laws, disappointing some on the left as he shows an independent streak. Talk more about this.
He also voted just last week to extend spying authorities as well. I think there has been so much kind of outrage at at Fetterman's kind of over the top, unconditional support of everything that Israel has done. He was asked, is Israel committing any war crime? He's like, absolutely not. Not even the question of, well, maybe there have been some that have been alleged. They should be investigated. Like nothing even approaching some sort of accountability or putting some sort of conditions on support for Israel. And so I feel like the criticism is kind of being received, and he's digging in, and now he's finding other ways that he's going to kind of get in little online fights with the left. At the same time, the polling on the border in particular, and the questions around immigration are clear that he's moving toward the easier position there.
Let's talk the squad while I have you, and the book that you wrote on them. You write this: members of the squad and its allies made history speaking up against Israel's war on Gaza. Then came the backlash. Walk us through that.
Yeah, The Guardian, in a review of the book, said it maybe should have been called The Squad and Its Enemies, or The Squad and Its Adversaries, which I think is actually fair. Just as the squad rose and enacted what Bernie Sanders calls this kind of political revolution in 2018, early 2019, the counter revolution rose with it. This organization, Democratic Majority for Israel, was kind of spun off by AIPAC advisors the same time that the squad was sworn in 2019. And then, as you said, when they really stood up on the floor in May of 2021 and created space for significant criticism of Israel, because it wasn't just them. Now there were more than a dozen members who came to the floor and were lambasting Israel for the bombing of Gaza back in May of 2021. That's when AIPAC decided, okay, we need to get fully into the game ourselves, not just with this Democratic Majority for Israel. And they spent more than $30 million that cycle purging critics of the party during primaries, and they're looking at possibly spending $100 million in this next cycle.
What do you see as the ultimate objective of the squad?
Fetterman is from Pittsburgh, where there was a mass synagogue killing. Perhaps it's more personal for him. Yeah, except that's not about Israel. You understand that, right? Like, that person who literally fucking went into the synagogue was a Trump supporter who became even more radical than Trump, and literally went in and detailed exactly why he was trying to kill Jews. He was trying to kill Jewish people because he believed that Jews were actually doing unrestricted immigration that was tarnishing the pure white gene pool in America. So John Fetterman literally turning around, okay, and advocating for more strict immigration is more in line with that fucking guy who did the synagogue shooting. Nothing here has anything to do with Israel. That guy didn't go in there and was like, literally was like, oh yeah, I'm doing this because like America is giving fucking money to Israel. Like, that's ridiculous. He was a fucking Nazi. Also, Israel does not represent Judaism. Attacking a synagogue because you think you are freeing Palestine is an act of anti-Semitism, okay? Something that I'm very clear on in general. So remember that. I'm not shitting on you for the record. I'm just saying that is not the case. I know you are looking for any reason to try to make sense of this, but I think it's simply, and I do agree with Edinger Mentum on this a little bit, I think it's simply that John Fetterman's whole shtick is that he just digs his heels in and then will just be like, oh, okay, I'm trolling you. I don't give a fuck. Like, this is my point. Lol. And like, everybody liked it when he was doing it for progressive policies, right? But it's not funny or cool or makes sense at all when you're doing it for an ongoing genocide that you are unconditionally and vociferously supporting. So that's the difference here. But the attitude from Fetterman is still the same. He's a big baby back bitch. Okay. Did he ever really do any progressive policies? Yeah, of course. He was always a defender of a lot of progressive shit, whether it be legalization of marijuana. He was a lieutenant governor of Pennsylvania, and he was an advocate for legalizing marijuana and other things as well. Like, it's just, he was a pro-immigration. Talked about how he did a bunch of shit. By the way, this part is also the beginning of the end, okay? that he went in and let the pro-Israel lobby edit his Israel-Palestine position in exchange for not nuking him with a super PAC. And then beyond that, he has become this demon. I think he sees that being a conservative Democrat, especially because like Pennsylvania is seen as like purple in some ways, especially the areas that he's supposed to represent. Okay. Anyway, it's a shame the Hogs were right about him getting a head transplant. Yeah. Why do this? Does he think he'll be more popular? Is it all about? I think it's I think it's he's just kind of an annoying asshole, right? And when he gets his mind on a certain thing, he just like kind of stands. I mean, he just thinks it's good to basically push for whatever the policy is now that he's made up his mind. But beyond that, I think it's a careerist opportunity. The Democratic Party's senatorial lineup is filled to the fucking brim with motherfuckers who are just like John Fetterman, right? Oh, I'm a senator in a kind of red area, in a kind of red state, or a state that could be leaning red, so I'm just going to be a fucking ginormous piece of shit and fuck over my own constituents. Joe Manchin is another example of this. And I think that that's what John Fetterman is positioning himself towards as well. Like, he will be progressive on certain things, probably, or maybe not at all. Fetterman's take on Israel is disappointing. I don't think we'd have gotten anything better from Mehmet Oz, though. We'll have to primary him next time. It just sucks. It sucks because, like, I know what that feels like. I know how quickly that shift happened. And I know it sucks when you, like, advocate for a person. And as did I, by the way, defended him, advocated for him. And you know, a lot of people here might have even literally worked on his campaign, and then all of a sudden, and I know people that work, like, directly work on his campaign, right? These are progressive people. It just fucking sucks to see someone like that go from perhaps maybe being one of the better contenders for a new left in America, right, to this giant asshole who loves, giant asshole who just, like, loves being contrarian and is making light of a ongoing genocide. Anyway, I wanted to briefly cover that for you to understand the situation with John Fetterman. But I also need you to understand another thing. Pro-Palestine has never been a popular position in this goddamn country. Okay? This is the most popular it has ever been. As someone who's been at this for the past 10 fucking years, I'm telling you, it has never been this popular. In any age demographic, at least now under the age of 35, it is pretty popular. Okay? So, but yet it's still not very popular. Do not let Twitter fool you into thinking that it is. So, that's something to also consider. You do not advocate for positions simply because it's popular and you want the Democratic Party to win. You advocate for positions because you think it's a good thing. You think it's good for Americans. I don't care if Medicare for All polls well. I care that Medicare for All will legitimately help people, will help every American be rid of medical debt. Okay? This is something that a lot of people forget in this space. Because I think a lot of you became political actors or politically minded at a time when the Democratic Party was, you know, not in power in 2020, leading up to 2020. Okay? When the Democratic Party had no power, so you had the likes of even Kamala Harris saying that they were pro-Medicare for all. But that is a lie. They are not. They are not actually pro-Medicare for all. They could just simply vote on that because they knew that the optics of it would look good. They could get their progressive bona fides. However, they didn't actually ever have to act on it, specifically because Donald Trump was in power. And Democrats were radicalized against, negatively polarized against Trump. Democratic voters, I mean. So make no mistake, this does not mean This does not necessarily mean that your positions are always going to be popular. You're not advocating for these positions because they're popular. You're advocating for these positions because they're right. Okay? Anyway. As long as the Democrats can sit on their ass and threaten minorities into voting for them, they will never pass progressive policies. Like Angela Davis says, we cannot rely on governments regardless of who is empowered to do the work only mass movements can do. Yes, except the Democratic Party is no longer even defending minorities is the point. And as the calculation on the ground changes, as the Democratic Party makes major gains, as Joe Biden did, with the older white constituencies, because Joe Biden right now is within striking distance of Donald Trump, according to current polling, only because of the suburban moderate whites that are Republican Party voters that think Trump is gross. Not because like the Democratic Party is like legitimately profoundly popular amongst marginalized populations in general. Okay? And that mental calculation, that electoral calculation is showing up in the way that they legislate. Okay? Okay, listen. Chatter's asking about fucking YouTube videos and whatnot. Just contact Little Bear. Why am I talking about this, by the way? Why am I talking about the immigration policy? Because the immigration policy is supposed to be one of the major differences between the Biden administration and the Trump administration. Biden positioned himself as the guy who wasn't going to fucking lock up immigrants for no fucking reason, right? And then he got bullied over and over again. And then he continued building the Trump wall as recently as like in the past couple of months. Like what good is like okay, Biden isn't pushing for build the wall as a campaign message, but it doesn't change anything. Ostensibly, he's doing the same shit. What the fuck? Trump deported less than Obama and Biden. You could argue Republicans are better on immigration. No, you can't argue Republicans are better on immigration because Trump deported less than Barack Obama and Biden because under Democratic administrations, look, see, people are already positioning themselves. Look, 10-month subscriber. This election isn't about Biden. It's about defeating MAGA once and for all. And that is a falsehood. Okay? Why is that a falsehood? Why is that a falsehood? Well, let me explain to you why that's a falsehood. Okay? Wait, where the fuck did it go? Oh, here it is. Because if the Biden administration ends up making gains in the margins for certain things while simultaneously taking some of the more important differences, like policy differences that they are supposed to have with the Republican right and make them permanent, like Title 42, which is fucking insane, then it doesn't matter. One side is more aggressive and messages in a more racist way. The other side says, actually, we're not racist, but we're still going to do the same policies. Here. Allowing illegal immigrants who have jobs in the United States to apply for legal status is a Fox News poll. 62% favor it. Okay? 62%. Now, let me explain something to you. Americans are really fucked up in the way that they operate as well. Because simultaneously, they will literally, the American voter, the median American voter, has this opinion while also simultaneously thinks like that like the average immigrant is a fucking rapist and needs to be immediately deported. And you're like, how do you have these two opinions at the same time? That's precisely how you arrive at Republican Party voters that unironically are in favor of amnesty that also are championing the build the wall narrative. One thing that I always have to mention to you, and this is something that I've been saying for the past 10 fucking years now, okay? Democrats do this thing that is incredibly damaging, where they take a right-wing reactionary false premise that the Republicans move with, like immigrants are rapists, drug dealer, murderers, right? Or this idea that like immigrants are bad, right? Democrats don't counter message against that and say, no, immigrants are good, actually. They sit back and they wait for that message to become the permanent message. And then they poll on immigration issues and they find out that people believe the Republican Party's lies and actually have a more reactionary approach to immigration in the country. So then what did the Democrats do? Well, they go, okay, well, we are also restrictive on immigration. We're just like we're maybe a little bit less restrictive than the Republicans, but we're also restrictive on immigration. When you do that, when you cede ground on right-wing framing on an issue, all you do is make this issue a reality, even if it is built around a false premise, a lie that immigrants are more predisposed towards crime, for example. That's a lie. There's no evidence for this. As a matter of fact, the only evidence, which is limited, shows the exact opposite of that, right? The problem is Republicans don't counter message and show the truth, or Democrats don't counter message and show the truth. Republicans flood the market with falsehoods, and then Americans are like, well, okay, well, if immigrants are rapists, then, we should do something about it, right? Understandably. That's what you're going to see. If that's all you're hearing as an average American, you're going to be like, what the fuck? I don't want rapists in my neighborhood. What the fuck is this shit, right? So then they say they want more restrictive immigration. And then the Democrats say, okay, we'll give you more restrictive immigration. All you've done is cede ground to the Republicans on this issue. And no matter what, Republicans are always going to be able to beat you in that game. You cannot outflank the Republicans on patriotism. You cannot outflank the Republican Party on immigration. You cannot outflank the Republican Party on reactionary attitudes. That's their bread and butter. It is so fucking stupid. No one, and I mean no one, is going to poll and say Democrats are better on immigration if the majority think a false premise that immigrants are a problem in this country is a reality. You're not going to be able to outflank the Republicans on that. So all you've done now is basically turn this conversation away from the reality that immigration is not a problem in this country to basically conceding that it is a problem in this country. You are never going to be able to defeat the Republicans on this. Another thing that happened was crime. Okay? Crime. Democrat-run cities are hotbeds of crime. Every red state has a higher murder rate. Okay? Every red state, in comparison to every blue state, has a higher murder rate, higher rates of gun violence, higher rates for murder. And yet, if you ask Americans, they think, Democrat-run cities are hotbeds of crime. Hotbeds of crime. There's so much crime happening in Democrat-run cities, Democrat-run states. Why did you not counter message around that? Why did you capitulate to the falsehoods? Why did you cede ground to the Republicans? They will always win. The crime is a real fucking issue, and they're killing everyone in these blue cities and blue states. They will always win. They will always win that front. You cannot look at the Republican Party being like, we should be able to say the N-word, and then go, you know what? That's actually true. You should be able to say the N-word. We're going to say it, but we're going to say it with a soft A, and then have people vote for you because they're going to be saying it with a hard R. They're always going to go right. If you allow that to even happen, if you allow this to be like the norm, the normal opinion, if you don't counter message against that and go, no, actually, you shouldn't be able to say that. What the fuck are you doing? Republicans are always going to win that battle. Anyway, terrifying. Actually terrifying. It's really stupid. I remember that video of older Border Patrol officer riding in his Explorer talking about the immigrants saying they're good people, simultaneously corralling them. Exactly. So this isn't just like fuck the Democratic Party. I'm putting my electoralist hat on here. Okay? I'm putting my DNC operative hat on here and saying Democrats, wake the fuck up. You cannot win elections if you do not show the population that you are different than the Republican Party. If you do not show the population that you are genuinely different, not marginally, but genuinely different than the Republicans, and you do not counter message against the fake bullshit that the Republican Party is spouting by way of all matter of communications, from Fox News all the way down to the fucking average YouTuber, okay? You're going to lose. You're always going to lose. You're allowing the country to lose. You're allowing the country to become more and more right-wing. Now, of course, if I take the electoralist hat off for a second and look at it with a more macro perspective, look at it from the outside, then, of course, I will say that, of course, it's a bourgeois democracy and both parties are aligned on this agenda, aligned on the agenda of more reactionary policy, because ultimately they're operating at the behest of the same corporate benefactors. They are still there to defend capitalism. The Democratic Party is most successful at shutting off any kind of leftist momentum, to provide a bottleneck for any kind of real leftist momentum in this country, because they too fear material changes. Okay? So now, let's get to our most significant ally.
Now on the Israel-Hamas war, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin arriving overnight in Israel, set to meet with Prime Minister Netanyahu, amid reports that the administration is pressuring Israel to scale back its offensive in Gaza. Our foreign correspondent, Britt Clennett, is on the scene for us there in Israel. Good morning, Britt.
Good morning, Robin. Yeah, those high-profile visits coming here as the civilian death toll in Gaza climbs by the day, and questions linger over the accidental killing of 3 hostages by Israeli fire. This morning, ongoing hostage negotiations as more than 100 are still being held in Gaza. A U.S. official telling ABC News the director of the CIA, Bill Burns, is meeting leaders from Israel and Qatar in Europe to join those high-stakes discussions. And Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin arriving in Israel this morning to discuss transitioning into a more focused phase of the war. Austin also hoping to quiet concerns over a wider regional conflict. We saw firsthand Israel's growing tension with Lebanon's Iran-backed militant group Hezbollah. Israel and Hezbollah exchanging cross-border fire here. Incoming artillery sending our team into a bunker. This is a daily experience for you.
Yes, except this time we had the privilege of being right next to this bunker and this base. Combat soldiers have to operate far beyond these walls.
Combat soldiers also on the ground throughout Gaza.
Poor guys, man. It's just like, yeah, it's so scary for them that they have to go into Gaza and like kill everyone, including their own fucking hostages, by the way, which I covered over the weekend, but important to talk about even more.
Gaza, the IDF saying they found the biggest Hamas tunnel uncovered so far. ABC's Ines de la Cuetera goes inside.
The IDF saying this probably took millions of dollars, and they say they will be destroying this tunnel.
The Israeli military's aerial assault of the Strip remains relentless too. The Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry saying more than 18,700 Palestinians have been killed in this war. 64 journalists also killed, according to the Committee to Protect Journalists. Al Jazeera cameraman Summer Abu Daka laid to rest over the weekend. Back in Israel, a funeral held for the first of the 3 hostages accidentally killed by Israeli troops. Their preliminary investigation says Alon Shamriz...
They censored the poster behind him because the poster behind him has a Confederate flag on it. There's a Pantera poster with the Confederate flag in it.
Yotam Haim and Sama Talalka,
which, by the way, does not mean he deserved to be fucking killed. Certainly not by the Israeli forces, nor by Hamas in general, okay?
Had left a building in a very intense area in Gaza, without shirts, carrying a makeshift white flag. Now, that investigation had also said that...
Yeah, they had SOS signs written in Hebrew and were disrobed to show they weren't armed. Okay?
The soldiers initially fired because they thought they saw a threat. But Israel still saying it is determined to destroy Hamas, although U.S. officials say Austin is expected to push Israel away from this heavy bombardment we're seeing in Gaza right now. Whit?
All right, Britt Clennett for us. Thank you.
Totally not Hannibal Directive? No, I don't think this was a Hannibal Directive moment. That was more of a, we are so used to killing civilians that we thought that they were Palestinian civilians again moment. Why did the IDF say they killed the 3 hostages instead of blaming Hamas? I actually don't know. I still don't fully understand why they did that, because normally they could just like have easily said, oh no, it's a Hamas that killed them. Hamas did it. I think that part of the reason why don't you watch Hamas videos is such a funny question. Mein Gouda. Okay. I wonder why. Possibly because like a lot of it is TOS, dog. And I do watch Hamas videos, for the record. It's just as long as it's not terms of service violations, I do. I watch videos from the Hamas side as well. So, some streamers have gotten banned over that. Be careful. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe reporting accurate to their family. Well, there's a lot of maybe people are trying to get me to watch it so they can get me banned or something. Like to be like, oh, they're watching terrorist. He's watching terrorist propaganda or some shit. That's probably what it is. Yeah, like this guy. Following since 2018. Jesus Christ, bro. Following since 2018. Came in a couple times. Popping off in here, being like, can you watch some Hamas videos, please? Can you please watch some Hamas videos? I would love for you to watch some Hamas videos, please. I feel like this would be an easy lie for the Israeli population to catch if they blamed Hamas, and it's obviously an issue that really sways Israeli opinion. Yeah. So... Qassam was intending to disclose the execution of the 3 hostages the next day. I suspect that there's probably evidence. There's probably evidence to show on the Palestinian side to disprove that narrative, because they did it in, it seems like they did it in broad fucking daylight, if I'm not misunderstanding it. So I think that's part of the reason why they openly wanted to cut ahead of it. And it also feels like it could have been a failed messaging strategy as well, because I did see some of the largest dick writers trying to fucking say, look at how moral Israel is. They openly admitted that they killed their own hostages instead of fucking blaming it on Hamas. And it's like, bro, really? That's your fucking take? Oh my God, what the fuck? Mhud absolutely daggering Dev0094. Hey, fuckhead, stop worrying about Hamas videos and get back to commenting on Model Hub. Jesus Christ. Jesus fucking Christ. Mhud is out for blood today. There's also multiple U.S. drones overhead at any given time. I expect nothing from our government, but it's an opportunity to try to move towards neoliberal placatory peace. Absolutely fucking destroyed them. Anyway. Possible the soldiers spread the video of killing online like they did for the other civilians. So here's the other thing I was going to show you. Great messaging going on the Israeli front. Okay, great messaging going on the Israeli front. They're doing a fucking phenomenal job. Obviously, yesterday, Benjamin Netanyahu came out on a Times of Israel article where he openly was like, no, I am the guy who has thwarted the 2-state solution. I will never allow a Palestinian state to happen. I did that for years and years. Get at me. Okay. Here I was going to show you this. The IDF published photos of showing banners hung by 3 hostages mistakenly killed by Israeli troops in Gaza, which read, help, 3 hostages, and SOS. IDF spokesman said the building was located 200 meters from where the hostages were shot. They published the photos of the banners hung by the 3 hostages mistakenly killed by the Israeli troops. I don't know why they're showing all of this, because this unironically makes them look fucking horrible. So I don't know why they're openly.
שמנו הערב תמונות, ממש עכשיו, של מבנה בו שהו שלושת החטופים כ-200 מטר ממקום האירוע בו אירע האסון. אנחנו עדיין לא יודעים להגיד כמה זמן שהו במבנה. אנחנו בודקים מבנה נוסף שייתכן ששהו גם בו.
So I don't know why they're like even revealing more of the details, the gruesome details of how they fucking straight up executed their own hostages. I don't know why. Especially because like this quite literally is turning into a major fuck up, because it has led to the largest protest so far. Like Ombim Beyachad, I think I'm saying their name right, Stand Together, and many other groups that range from like the Israeli left to the far left, which is albeit marginal, have been protesting, and the hostage families have been protesting for a ceasefire since like October 7. However, the numbers have grown dramatically since the three the three Israeli hostages were executed by the Israeli occupying force, right? So this is actually becoming quite problematic for them. And I don't know why they are giving into this, especially as this comes at the tail end of a 4-day communications blackout, which barely made a dent in American media. This kind of thing was significantly more important, it seems, like a month ago when everyone was paying attention to it. And now, 4 days of telecommunications shut down as Israel gets to do whatever the fuck they're doing, and it barely makes a dent in the Western news. The photos were released before they knew it was associated with the hostages. The IDF provides new details on yesterday's tragic incident. According to a senior officer in the Southern Command, citing an initial probe, the incident began after one soldier stationed in a building identified 3 suspicious figures exiting a building several dozen meters away. All 3 were shirtless, with one of the figures carrying a stake with a makeshift white flag. The soldier, who believed the men moving towards him was an attempt by Hamas to lure IDF soldiers into a trap, immediately opened fire and shouted "terrorist" to the other forces. According to the probe, the soldier that killed the 2 of the men, while the third, who was hit and wounded, fled back into the building from which he came. At that stage, the commander of the battalion, who was also in the building where the soldier shot from, went outside and called on the forces to halt their fire. Meanwhile, sounds of someone shouting help in Hebrew were heard by troops in the area. Moments later, a third man came out of the building to which he fled, and another soldier opened fire at him, killing him. The battalion commander then realized that the appearance of the third man was unusual, and it was revealed to be an Israeli hostage. Think about that. Remember what I told you, that like it's impossible to distinguish between like Israelis and Palestinians, because there is a shit ton of Israeli Arab Jews as well. So, and also obviously Palestinian citizens of Israel or Israeli Muslim citizens as well, like the Bedouin. This is part of the reason why these guys fucking. This is part of the reason why their indiscriminate killing ends up actually causing a 20% friendly fire rate in the Israeli occupying force, because they're also fucking terrified on top of that. Still, the IDF said it understands. Oh, here. The soldier who immediately opened fire upon identifying the 3 men did so against the protocols, as did the second soldier who killed the third man, according to the officer. Still, the IDF said it understands what led the soldiers to do so. In Shajaya, the senior officer says the IDF has not identified any Palestinian civilians in recent days. I wonder why. The officer says troops have killed at least 38 Palestinian terror operatives in Shajaya in recent days. The only people seen wearing civilian clothing have been Hamas operatives, often unarmed. The operatives collect weapons left behind in various buildings, open fire troops, and then flee again, unarmed, to another building. The IDF has also encountered several seemingly unarmed civilians in Shajaya who later turned out to be Hamas suicide bombers. There's also been several attempts by Hamas in the area to lure soldiers into an ambush. On Wednesday, in what initially thought to be unrelated to yesterday's deadly mistaken shooting, the officer says several hundred meters away from the troops found a building with a spray paint SOS in English and another spray-painted message reading in Hebrew, help, 3 hostages. The soldiers at the time believed the building was booby-trapped, but now the military is investigating a possible connection. Oh my God, they fucking snitched on themselves. They showed this footage before they figured out that they were real hostages. The soldiers at the time believed the building was booby-trapped, but now the military is investigating a possible connection to yesterday's incident. Immediately following the incident, the IDF sent new protocols to ground troops. Does anyone have the fucking general? They did a PR hit, okay? They did a PR hit where, like, some IDF general is, like, speaking to his troops about how, like, we never kill hostages, of course. Right, we do not kill hostages. And then they're like, yeah. I don't know if you've seen that video. I think the IDF posted it. This is it. Yeah. You see 2 people there with their hands up without shirts. Take 2 seconds. And I want to tell you something. Just important. And if it's 2 Gazans with a white flag coming out to surrender, why would we shoot at them? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. That's not the IDF. That's like me saying that at the top of the hour, we don't serve a 3-minute ad break. That's not us. That's not our motto. Except it is. Because at the top of the hour, there is a 3-minute ad break, of course. If you no longer want to see those ads, all you need to do is subscribe for $5 or free with the Twitch Prime by connecting your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account, where you get 1 free Prime subscription a month. Use it on your favorite broadcaster. Hopefully that's me. Okay? Here is the 3-minute ad break now. You can also get gifted a sub. Here's the 3-minute ad break. So, look, what's interesting here is that this is a message from the IDF Chief of the General Staff, LTG Herzi Halevi, on IDF rules of engagement from a situational assessment with the commanders and soldiers of the 99th Division in Gaza. They're talking about how they would never shoot civilians. They wouldn't even shoot Palestinian civilians, right? Look at their fucking response. Look at the reaction.
א', האירוע הוא אירוע מאוד קשה, כואב, אף אחד לא יבוא ויאמר אחרת. אבל אני אומר לכם,
But beyond that, we all understand
כולנו
this.
מבינים, לא בשביל
I
זה
don't need
אני
to come
צריך
and tell
לבוא
you
פה
this.
לספר לכם את זה. אני אומר לכם שזה
I tell you
אירוע
that the situation could have easily not have
שממש
happened.
בקלות יכול היה לא לקרות. ותחשבו, הרי מה, למה באנו לתימון?
Why did we start the ground operation? We set 3 goals. Bro, I'm not one of those like they them military Andes at all, but this, like, I mean, this man, that's a reservist, dog. What are we doing here? Like, bro, like, veterans look like this after combat, okay? A couple years after combat. They don't look like this when they're in combat. Like, there's no better representation to me than like the Israeli occupying force being basically a fucking assortment of like reservists than this. And no, this isn't fucking fat shaming, okay? Suck my dick. I'm not fat shaming at all. I'm simply talking about something that many people understand. There's constant PT when you're in the fucking military, when you're a part of a unit, okay? Or when you're literally deployed, you're not going to look like a fucking gravy seal. This to me shows that that's a reservist. That's a reservist. You only get away with this if you're a cop. Okay? I don't know, I work for the Air Force and I've seen a few dudes who are close to being that big Lamau. They literally count calories for overweight troops. Anyway, my point is, there's like a standard physical fitness that you have to have if you are being deployed, and you know, I've never seen a dude this out of shape in active combat. Okay, fuck's he doing in a goddamn building inside of Gaza if he's in the Israeli Air Force, chatters?
לפרק את חמאס, להחזיר את הביטחון לתושבי העוטף, ואתם פה על המסדרון, שממנו יצאו התקפות לבארי, התקפות כל כך קשות. נכנסתם לפה, ראיתם איך בארי נראית. והמשימה השלישית, השבת החטופים. עכשיו אנחנו כולנו מאוד רוצים את זה, ואני אומר לכם באירוע הזה, יצאו 3 אנשים. הם
3
לקחו
people came
בחשבון
out.
שהם
They
לוקחים
took into
סיכון
account that they are
שהם
taking a risk by
באים
approaching
לכוח
IDF
צה"ל.
troops.
כדי להפחית את
To
הסיכון,
minimize
הם
the
באמת
risk, they
חשבו,
really thought
מורידו
they
חולצות
took
כדי
off their
שאף אחד
shirt
לא
so that
יחשוב
no one would
שיש
think
להם
they have an
מטען.
explosive device
החזיקו בד לבן
and
על
held a
מוט,
white cloth on a pole to
לזהות
identify
עצמם,
themselves.
באו, דיברו
They came
בעברית,
speaking
קראו
Hebrew,
הציל.
calling for help.
ואנחנו, באמת,
And we really
לוחמים
are
שלנו,
soldiers whom I haven't met
שאני
yet,
לא פגשתי אותם עוד, אבל אני בטוח
but
שהם
I'm sure they are the best
הטובים
because
ביותר, כי
everyone wants to
כולם
do well.
רוצים לעשות טוב.
Bro, he's talking about 3 dudes that just like fucking were so fast and loose with their trigger finger that they like they clapped 3 shirtless, what they thought Palestinian at the time, civilians. Okay?
אני בטוח שהם היו בטוחים שהם עושים את הדבר הכי נכון. אבל אני מדבר איתכם לא כדי להגיד אם הם היו בסדר או לא, כדי שאנחנו
I'm
קדימה נהיה
speaking to you
בסדר.
not to say that they were right or wrong. Wait, what do you mean they were right or wrong? But so that we will be right going forward.
אם הם היו בסדר או לא, כדי שאנחנו קדימה נהיה בסדר. אתה רואה 2 אנשים, הם לא מאיימים עליך, הם לא עם
You
נשק.
see people, they aren't threatening you, they don't have a
ידיים למעלה,
weapon.
הם בלי חולצות.
They are with their hands up and without
קח
shirts.
2 שניות.
Take 2 seconds.
ובוא, אני רוצה להגיד
I
לכם
want to
משהו
tell
לא
you something
פחות
just as
חשוב.
important.
ואם זה 2 עזתים
And if it's 2
עם
Gazans
דגל לבן,
with a white flag
רוצים להיכנע,
coming
מה,
out to
אנחנו יורים
surrender,
בהם?
why would
בשום
we
פנים
shoot at
ואופן
them?
לא.
Absolutely not.
בשום פנים ואופן לא.
Absolutely not.
זה לא צה"ל, תקשיבו.
That's not the IDF.
אני אומר
Okay, bro. Yeah. No,
לכם, מי
definitely.
שהתבלבל
I'm
פה,
telling you, whoever got confused here,
גם מי שנלחם איתנו,
even those who fought
עכשיו הניח את הנשק
and now lay
ומרים
down their
ידיים,
arms and raise their
אנחנו
hands,
שובים אותו.
we arrest them, we don't shoot them. Now, what he's describing here is literally standard operating procedure. What he's describing here, which is a laughable thing when you consider what they have done, okay, is actually technically the SOP of like every modern military, because that is in accordance with the international humanitarian laws. Okay? Not following on this would be a war crime. Except the reason why he has to fucking reiterate this position is because they have been doing that all the time, and they've been doing it so much that they quite literally fucking did it to their own hostages. I just want you to understand that the Israeli diaper force is doing PR here, except they haven't been following that at all, as we know. Many documented instances show that they have not been following that at all.
אנחנו מוצאים המון מודיעין מהשבויים שיש לנו. יש לנו מעל 1,000 כבר. אנחנו לא יורים בהם כי צה"ל לא יורה בבן אדם שמרים
We
ידיים.
don't shoot them because the IDF doesn't shoot a person who has their hands up. Yeah, okay.
זה עוצמה, זה לא חולשה.
That's strength,
אני אומר
not
לכם, אני
weakness.
נזכר,
Dude, they're laughing.
מה אמרתי לחיילים שלי?
There's
בן אדם
cuts.
שמרים
What did he
ידיים.
say that they're laughing?
זה עוצמה, זה לא חולשה. ואני אומר לכם, אני
What? And I tell you, I remember
נזכר מה אמרתי לחיילים
what
שלי
I said to my soldiers, a battalion
לפני
commander.
הכניסה פנימה לעזה בעופרת יצחק.
Why are they all laughing? What the fuck did he say?
משפט אחרון בשיחה לפני לחימה. תעבדו עם הראש. אנחנו כל הזמן מרגישים
your head. We
שלחימה
always
זה
feel
עם
that fighting
הידיים,
is with their
לחימה זה
hands,
עם
fighting is with
הרגליים.
the
אני
feet.
אומר לכם,
I tell you, gentlemen,
רבותיי, אל
don't
תפסיקו
stop thinking for a
לחשוב
second in combat.
שנייה אחת בלחימה.
I love that he has to be like, bro, please don't stop thinking. Please use your heads in combat. I know you guys are like indiscriminate little genocide machines, okay? And that's all fine and dandy, but like, you know, you gotta fucking, you know, you gotta level it back a little bit. You gotta dial it like maybe a couple notches back. Please stop shooting at everyone. You know, it's fine to kill the Palestinians, but like we just ended up fucking up real big time. You are not allowed to kill people attempting to surrender. That's a war crime. Yeah, I don't think they give a shit about that or have given a shit about that. Oh.
מי שמצליח תוך כדי הלחימה גם להפעיל את הראש, הוא פוגע באויב יותר טוב, פוגעים בו פחות, הוא עושה תחבולות יותר טוב, הוא פחות פוגע בכוחותינו, הכל הוא עושה יותר טוב, הוא חד יותר על הסביבה, הוא מזהה דברים. כל הזמן תשאלו את עצמכם שאלות. כל הזמן תעבדו עם הראש, והלוואי ותהיה לנו עוד הזדמנות שיגיעו אלינו חטופים, או שנגיע אנחנו לבית ונעשה את הדבר הנכון. תמשיכו לעשות עבודה מעולה, וזה כוח גדול
Continue to do excellent work. It's a great, strong force, and we will need it going forward. Anyway, so yeah. By the way, ironic because he refused to say. Ironic because he refused to say whether the two people that he was talking about did something wrong or not. Except, of course, they did something wrong. They killed Israelis. Everybody in Israel recognizes that Palestinians aren't human. Most people don't give a shit when they do this to Palestinian civilians. They do, however, give a shit when they are doing it to Israeli civilians. The big problem there was use your head. Try to figure out if someone you're shooting at is a Palestinian civilian or an Israeli one. If you shoot a Palestinian civilian, like, okay, come on. Oh, oops, collateral damage. And even then, because it is the most moral military, it doesn't fucking matter. Their actions, even against the Israeli hostages, is like still, maybe it's good, maybe it's bad. Who's to say? Psychotic. I saw this. I don't know how valid this is, but a former commander of the Golani Forces told Channel 12 that the brigade lost a quarter of its combat forces in the Gaza battles. I don't know how correct this is. I don't know if we can find someone. I don't know if there's any counter to this at all. The Golani Brigade is obviously their most elite forces, like one of their more experienced forces. So, anne sen yemeği yaptın mı? Öyle mi? Ben daha yemeyeceğim. This incident debunks mass Hamas surrender propaganda. They would have been very much dead if they were just Palestinians even surrendering. Yeah. I mean, the mass surrender stuff only occurs. The mass surrender stuff only occurs when they like siege a hospital or a school where like a big chunk of the population is sheltering, and they basically siege it. They kill a bunch of people in the process, and then they force everyone to come out without clothes, with their hands up, and then they stage them. Like, and I don't mean staging as in like they're faking it, even though I do think sometimes they are faking some of the stuff, but they stage it in the same way that like cops would with drugs after a bust, right? That's the term staging in this situation is a double entendre, I guess, but I'm using it in the professional sense. They stage the hostage, or they stage the prisoner of war apprehension process. They pose them, and then they get some of the people, whether they are like actual Hamas or Al-Qassam or you know, any of the militants or not, to pick up weapons and place them. In certain instances, like in the hospitals, like obviously the hospitals have their own security. There are weapons inside of hospitals for that reason. Remember, Gaza is currently bedlam as a consequence of Israel's occupation and bombing campaign. So there's going to be like people that are even inside of the borders of Gaza that are Palestinian, that are criminal elements that may want to go into a hospital or whatever. So you have to have security. It's a war zone, right? So they do have weapons inside of hospitals, small arms in general, and therefore they will take those weapons and they will place them to make it seem like these hospitals are populated with like Hamas militants or whatever. They do this dragnet. They put them in a placing ground. They'll do a dragnet in a school. They'll kill a bunch of people. According to reports on the ground, they'll like execute a bunch of people in the process. And then they will turn around and put every single Palestinian through the face identification process. You've seen photos of this before, where they have 100 Palestinian men that are naked, sitting in like a pile, basically, in an area that they've dug in, and then they line up and they take photos of their faces. That's to figure out if any of them are like suspected militants. And if they get like maybe one or two in that group that is a suspected militant, then it's like, yep, there we go. We did our job. Okay? Hold on. I'm going to have Mohammed Al-Safin on today. Hold on. I have to talk to him real quick. What is this? Hamas is a mission, and in writing, it has to take it back the Holy Land, spread the Muslim faith, and wipe out all the opposition. It's super radical, and I don't support that way of life. The mission is Hamas is not limited to Israel. It's a worldview I disagree with. Wait, what? What are you talking about? Hamas's mission is to take back the Holy Land and shit. That's fucking... Not only is that not possible, but it's also not correct. That's not correct. I know you told all the YouTube channels to contact me for YouTube. Once again, yes, they can all contact me. Tag me in a post on Twitter or message me on Discord. I will get the demonetized channels' names to you. And get the demonetization reasons in the video that got demonetized as well. Anyway, not correct at all. Anyways, can I have that button up? No. Speaking of Hamas, actually, before I have Mohammed Al-Safin on today, let me, here, he sent me this video to watch. What does Hamas actually want? This is actually a decent video. So we'll start off with what does Hamas actually want?
In December 1987, on a strip of Mediterranean coast overcrowded with refugees, a group calling itself the Islamic Resistance Movement was founded. In Arabic, its acronym spelled a word meaning zeal, Hamas. Its goal was simple. It wanted to liberate historic Palestine. Until 1948, the majority of the people living there were Palestinian, but 750,000 of them were driven from their homes, never allowed to return. At least 450 of their towns and villages were emptied, and in their place, the State of Israel was founded. In 1967, Israel occupied the remaining parts of Palestine, the West Bank and Gaza Strip, and it was in Gaza that Hamas was born. There's been a lot of interest in Hamas and its goals since the group launched the biggest attack inside Israel on October the 7th, 2023. Politicians and pundits like reducing complex issues to simple binaries of good and evil.
Hamas is a brutal terrorist organization.
They're a bunch of medieval barbarians.
Unleashing pure, unadulterated evil.
They are not freedom fighters.
To a lot of people, though, they are. So we're going to talk to an expert who will help us understand why they would think that, what Hamas wants, and how it's changed in the 35 years since it was founded.
My name is Tariq Bakoni. I'm a writer. I'm the author of Hamas Contained: The Rise and Pacification of Palestinian Resistance.
Hamas was formed by and appealed to people who had been expelled by Israel from their homes.
Hamas as a movement is a nationalist movement first and foremost. So it's a movement that is committed to the liberation of Palestine from Israeli colonization. The movement has never engaged in any activities or operations outside the land of historic Palestine.
Hamas grew out of the Palestinian branch of the Muslim Brotherhood, which had initially focused on charity work and education rather than confronting Israeli occupation. It was secular nationalists and leftists under the exiled Palestine Liberation Organization who led that fight. The PLO is recognized by the UN as the sole legitimate representative of the Palestinian people, but in December 1987, without PLO input, a mostly unarmed uprising, known as the First Intifada, began against Israel in Gaza and the West Bank. Hamas declared its existence 2 days into this rebellion. It's worth taking a moment here to address something. Because Hamas has an Islamic identity and Israel proclaims itself a Jewish state, a lot of people claim its animosity towards Israel is based on anti-Semitism. Bakoni says that's not accurate.
This is a fundamental misreading of Hamas and of Hamas's politics. It has not employed tactics that are grounded in anti-Semitism or that necessarily fight against Israeli Jews because of their Judaism. So when we think about Hamas,
like, people constantly talk about the charter, the 1988 charter, and there is like a fuck ton of anti-Semitic shit in there, okay? Yeah, 100%. Just that you have to look at their popularity at the time, and even with respect to their actions, okay? Even with respect to their actions, like what the Palestinian people think is very different than what Hamas is doing and what Hamas is saying. But as far as their charter goes, 2017, there's a revamp on the charter that says, no, we are not anti-Semitic. even before that charter, you have like what is it? Not Yahya Sinwar, the fucking sheik or whatever. To be clear, the part claiming Hamas has never conducted attacks outside of the land of historic Palestine is false, as they've now conducted a ground attack and rocket attacks from Lebanon. Okay, sure. Sheikh Yassin himself talking about how like, oh, we don't hate Jews at all. We just want to have our land back. We want to have our fucking homes back or whatever. But ultimately, this isn't to do like propaganda to defend Hamas or to do PR for Hamas at all, okay? It's not that. The point is to better understand. The point is to better understand where what these people's motivations are, because the one side wants to say, no, they're terrorists. Don't fucking listen. Don't. This is all terrorism. This is all terrorism. And the real reason for why this is said is specifically because the reason why this is said is specifically because if you conflate Hamas's goals, some of which are legitimate, which is, of course, resistance to the Israeli occupation. Like Hamas militants right now and Palestinian militants in general right now are engaging in a defensive act as the Israeli occupying force is pummeling Gaza. Right now, they're not doing terrorism. Every single thing that they're doing, well, most of the things that they're doing, because like you still can't take hostages and stuff like that, but most of the things that they're doing, the overwhelming majority of the things that they're doing currently are not an act of terrorism. Israel is the one that is doing terrorism at this moment. Okay? So that's something to remember. Right? They are defending what remains of the sliver of land from an occupying force that is a belligerent occupier that is actually indiscriminately destroying both the civilian infrastructure but also civilian lives in general. 18,000 Palestinians have died so far in the hands of Israel. So, but the reason why people say, no, Hamas are anti-Semitic, they are worse than the Nazis, they're just like the Nazis, they're worse than the Nazis, they just want to kill all Jews, they're not operating with any kind of like real reason other than indiscriminate hatred towards Jews, they're rapist barbarians and whatnot. The reason why people say that is because they want to conflate the actual things that Hamas is doing. Not all of them are good, but the good things that Hamas are doing or the moral things that Hamas are doing, like defending the Gaza Strip from the Israeli occupying force, which is the truth, right? Which is both legally permissible and also morally righteous and just. I will stand on that. But because it's Hamas that's doing it and they're terrorists, they shouldn't have a right to do that. That's what the real reason why people say this and cast this broad brush is specifically so that you in the Western world don't look at this and go, but wait a minute. Like, aren't they kind of doing the correct thing in this moment? Does that make sense? You understand?
Discussing the liberation of Palestine, what it means for the movement is dismantling a system of colonial violence.
This was also addressed by Hamas's founder, Sheikh Ahmed Yassin.
He says we don't hate the Jews and fight them because they're Jews. They are people of religion and we are people of religion. If my brother who has the same religion and parents as me takes my home and expels me from my land, I will fight him.
In 2017, the group addressed this in its updated charter, we'll get to that later, saying, quote, Hamas does not wage a struggle against the Jews because they are Jewish.
Yeah, this is when they were trying to, they ended up having to take on civil governance duties, not dissimilar to the Taliban right now in Afghanistan, after years and years and years of just like simply being a militant force. And when you have to do that, all of a sudden the situation and the calculation changes, right? Now you have to take care of 2 million people. Obviously, this is Hamas goes woke in this moment when they have to change their structure almost entirely.
But wages a struggle against the Zionists who occupy Palestine. The First Intifada ended with the 1993 Oslo Accords between Israel and the PLO. The PLO gave up its claim to historic Palestine, renounced violence, and recognized the State of Israel. In exchange, a Palestinian Authority run by the PLO would have limited autonomy over some parts of the occupied West Bank and Gaza. The right of return for refugees would be discussed in future negotiations that were meant to lead to a Palestinian state in just the West Bank and Gaza. While many Palestinians saw this as a hopeful moment, others felt that the PLO had given up too much for too little. Hamas was among those opponents, and its members were persecuted by both Israel and the PA.
Yeah.
But its opposition wasn't just verbal. Hamas's military wing.
So, another thing that people need to understand here is that the Palestinian peace process that people love to talk about, to say like, oh, dude, classic Palestinians just like were giving great deals over and over again, and then they never took it because they're stupid and they're violent barbarians. And it's like, that's not the truth at all. Every single instance of this peace process, one, starts and ends with the fact that you are trying to make peace with an occupier, okay, that is occupying your land. So it's already like the starting position already is bad. And some of the major points of consideration are non-starters for the occupying side, like a right to return or having a standing military, right? So it wasn't simply territorial disputes, okay? It wasn't simply territorial disputes. It was straight up a non-starter that Palestinians would have any kind of sovereignty or any kind of autonomy in a two-state solution. This, of course, is ridiculous. Like, under no circumstances whatever would you ever say that that is a valid peace process, that this was a reasonable peace process where the Israeli government was making genuine concessions.
Is known as the Izz ad-Din al-Qassam Brigades.
When Hamas constituted itself in 1987 as the movement we understand today, it re-emerged through the social infrastructure as a military movement. So it began amassing weapons in order to commit to resisting Israel.
After an American-Israeli settler killed 29 Palestinians at a mosque in Hebron, Hamas responded with what would become its signature tactic for the next decade, a suicide bomb.
Yeah. So originally Hamas did not strike at Israeli civilians. And originally, even Hamas did not utilize suicide bombing in general. I believe that they kept their practice to, and remember, this is at this point they are still a marginal militia force that does not represent the interests of the Palestinian population. Remember, Palestinians are not going, oh, we love Hamas, they're the best. Only recently, after the worst aspects of the 75-year occupation, or specifically the peace process falling apart deliberately on behalf of the more right-wing factions and even like the centrist factions within Israel, genuinely propping up Hamas as the only force to negotiate with. And by the way, if you don't believe me, fucking listen to a former Shin Bet leader describe this in identical terms that I have time and time again, or listen to Netanyahu's own words that came out recently this past weekend, where he said he deliberately destroyed any attempt of Palestinians ever having a nation state and casting aside the Oslo Accords, right? Or saying that he would always hold back on the Oslo Accords, like things that he has said time and time again, but he has reiterated recently. In that process, even throughout that entire timeline, even though the Israeli government was basically trying to prop up a militant faction so that they could say, look, these Palestinians are all violent, we can't negotiate with them, they can never have a state, thinking that they can continue this occupation in the way that they have as an apartheid state, the Palestinian population did not ever show broad popular support to both the military actions, the militant actions, or even Hamas as Hamas in general.
Deadlier and more dramatic than shooting soldiers, these attacks had two goals. One was the disruption of the Oslo Accords. And 2, by expanding its targets to include Israeli civilians, Hamas hoped it would pressure the Israeli government to end the occupation.
This, by the way, is what Rashid Khalidi has said was or reiterated was a mistake. Like, the attacks on the Israeli civilian population would only end up hardening the position of the Israeli population as a whole, and that time and time again it was shown that, according to him at least, and according to what's the Pakistani guy that worked with the FLN, Ahmad, what was his name? Iqbal Ahmed, the Pakistani political scientist, writer, academic, who had offered tactics to the Palestinian liberation, saying that it was, who said this was a mistake? The Pakistani political scientist, writer, academic, Iqbal Ahmad, who served in the Pakistan military, but then also, I believe, worked in Tunisia and Algeria and supported the revolution in Algeria that was brought in at the time by the Palestinian militancy, or the Palestinian resistance groups, to take a look at their tactics. And Iqbal Ahmad, contrary to what they thought he was going to say, told them that given the nature of the Israeli population, that tactics that normally would cause terror upon a civilian population would not work in this circumstance. He was not anti killing civilians, mind you, in an active. You're botching the name so hard. Okay, shut up. I'm trying to fucking say it as best as I can. Suck my dick. Iqbal Ahmad, okay? He had said that given the nature of the Israeli population, attacks upon civilians would only cause galvanization on the Israeli front, and it would cause Israelis to harden their position and become even more militant and more reactionary, and that it was not an effective tactic. Which, of course, is understandable, considering the difference between the, for example, even the Jewish population in Algeria and the Christian population and even the Muslim population in Algeria that collaborated with the French authorities and worked alongside the French, the French colonialists, and how the violence that they were subjected to was only successful in Algeria because they had somewhere to go. Okay? They could go back to France. There are a lot of Israelis who have nowhere to go. So do Israelis, though? That's not true. You're not right about that. No, I know that everybody loves saying so do Israelis. That's not true. And this is not my perspective. This is the perspective of a dude who literally has studied terrorism and freedom fighting. Okay? And has actually literally participated in acts of terrorism and freedom fighting. So I don't know what the fuck you want. You're talking about a dude who worked with Frantz Fanon, an Algerian nationalist, and you're like, I don't care about his perspective. Like, it's not my perspective, it's his perspective. I'm just repeating it to you. Wait, I lost the script. You've acted in acts of terror? No, I'm talking about a fucking academic and a scholar. Suicide bombings essentially never work to achieve ultimate aims. They just essentially have a psychological impact on the local population for a certain period of time. All it led to was the conduction of a West Bank border wall and the expansion of settlements. No, I don't think it was suicide bombings that expanded the settlements. That's not correct. I will not say that at all. No. No. Suicide bombings harden the position of the Israeli population to become even more reactionary against Palestinians in general, certainly. But the idea that they are like the reason why West Bank settlements expanded is not correct. The settlements are complete Messianic Judaism, expansionist protocols from Israel because they want to expand into the West Bank and have total control from the river to the sea, as also openly stated in the Likud Charter as well. It's not. There's a material reason for it, but then also beyond that, there's also religious. They sell it from a religious perspective too, but it's not because like the Palestinians did suicide bombings and that's why it happened. Anyway.
But these tactics were controversial, even amongst Palestinians and even within Hamas itself.
So there was a lot of discussion internally amongst Palestinians about the morality of targeting civilians. Of course, under international law, targeting civilians is illegal.
Damn, this guy's good.